welcome to another episode of Get Up 10. I'm not gonna lie, I almost didn't have an episode this week, but I was like, we have been going consistently. We have been going consistently since August of 2023, and we're not about to stop now. And on top of that, I was just looking at my podcast the other day, and I think I saw like 72 or 73 episodes, and I definitely want to get to 100 episodes. So we're going to keep on going and just keep on recording and having good conversations. So I definitely do have some amazing interviews coming up. I'm in the process of getting them all scheduled so I can bring more amazing guests and their stories to y'all. But for now, we're going to have another solo episode. And before I really get into it, I do have notes because we're talking serious today. But before I really get into it, I do want to say thank you to everyone who came out to the Push Brunch this past weekend in Austell, Georgia. It was such an amazing event, and I was so honored to just be in the room. And what else? I got a lot of copies of Thrive into the hands of some beautiful women. So if you haven't gotten your copy yet, it's not too late. You can get a signed copy directly from me. You can get it on Amazon and Barnes & Nobles, and those links are always in the show notes. So a couple weeks ago, probably like over a month ago now, the way time is moving, I did a poll on my story, and the two topics were God's way versus my way, God's plans versus my plans, or values, beliefs, and convictions. What are they and why do they matter? And the results were evenly split. So I was like, okay, we have to talk about both of them. So last week, if you didn't already go listen, I talked about how we can recognize like God's plan versus our plans. And I used the story of Abraham because I just see myself in it. Abraham and Sarah, they have this promise over their lives, and they don't see how it's humanly possible, but God is faithful and he does what he says he's going to do. And so their story was not perfect, and they definitely tried it, but God saw them through, and that is so relatable for me. So go back and listen to last week's episode about God's plans versus my plans, God's way versus my way. It's a quick hitter, like wasn't even 30 minutes. So if you're tired of hour-long podcasts, go listen to that and you'll be encouraged, especially if you're questioning, like, what am I supposed to do with my life right now? Like, what is God saying to me? You know, I have these ideas, but I want God's way. Definitely go listen to last week's episode because I feel like it's definitely going to give you some clarity. But this week we're talking about values, beliefs, and convictions because it's not something that we talk about every day. It's definitely not something that we just like sit down and like, hey, so what's your values? Hey, like, what are you really convicted about? Right? Like, we don't have those conversations, but they're so important. And like growing up in different places, especially honestly church, for me, these are conversations, and even through like counseling and therapy, these are conversations that I've had to have and things that I've had to deal with. What are my values? What do I believe? And furthermore, what am I really convicted about? And so I want to break down each of those for you because maybe you have never sat down and had this kind of conversation. And really, this is like a conversation with yourself because you have to decide for yourself what you believe, what do you value, what are you convicted about. Other people can influence it, but at the end of the day, you have to make these decisions for yourself and act accordingly. So from everything that I'm going to share today, I really want you to pause and reflect for yourself. Like maybe even after you listen to this, pull out your journal and start writing, what's my beliefs? What's my values? What am I really convicted about? Okay, so before we start, I love a good definition because we be thinking that we know what things are, or we kind of have like an idea, but we don't really know what they are. So I just went on Google and I just asked for the definitions of these terms. So for values, okay, I lied. I didn't look up the definition of values. I mean, I did, but I felt like I could explain it a little better. So for values, it's essentially just like what is important to you, what matters to you, the things that you believe are like important or worthy or valuable. Those are your values. Beliefs are A belief is an acceptance that a statement is true or that something exists. And I was going to leave out that second part about that something exists, but I think it's actually really powerful, and I'll get into that in a second. And the last term that I wanted to define was conviction, which is a firmly held belief or opinion. The quality, another definition is the quality of showing that one is firmly convinced of what one believes or says. So when I was looking at it, it's like beliefs are here, but like convictions, they're next level. Like you really believe these things. That's a conviction. And so I'm going to unpack each one. And I don't think we'll be here too long, but we'll see. So values are what's important to you and what matters to you. Values are important because they can help you prioritize things. They can help you make decisions. And so my first time really pausing and thinking about my own values was back in 2017. And as an entrepreneur, I especially think about mission, vision, and values, right? So like mission is like, what are you here to do? Like, what do you want to see happen or change because of you? Vision is like overall, like because of you, like what are the things that you plan to do or that will change or will be done, like in the grand scheme of things, what's your vision? And then values is like, what's important to you? Like, what do you strive for people to associate with you? Like, remember when we were back in elementary school, I don't know about you guys, but we used to have the class awards at the end of the year, and it would be like different character traits, and each person in the class would get the certificate with the character trait that the teacher saw in them. And that's kind of like probably our earliest introduction in life to values, right? And it's the same way. Like when people think of you, what words or characteristics do you want to come to mind? Those are like values. And so, yes, like big companies will have mission, vision, and values, but you should also have personal mission, vision, and values for your own life. And so, like I said, the first time that I considered my values, what was important to me, was back in 2017. And that's also like when I started journaling. And I literally have my very first journal. And I opened up to the page where I wrote out my values just to share with you guys. And so, number one for me was God, okay? Because the Bible says, seek ye kingdom first, and all these things will be added onto you. God's got to come first. So when I thought about my values, God came first. And then after that, if you know me, family is everything to me. Family is so important to me. So God first, and then family. And then I also wrote that communication is really important to me because I love clarity. I love to know where people stand, what people are thinking. I love a good conversation. That's where we have like understanding and where bridges are built. So communication is really important to me. Some other things that I wrote as my values back in 2017 were traveling, adventures, trying new things. And if you know me to this day, I stand on that. I'm going to try something new. I'm going to hop on a plane, boat, train, whatever. We're going to get out. Other things that I said I valued was fitness. And if you know me to this day, because I grew up a student athlete, and to this day, I work out 4 or 5 times a week. It's been 5 consistently, but I said 4 to be nice. Anyways, learning, growing, honesty, effort, independence, resilience, ambition, purpose. Those are all things that are really important to me and help to guide how I live. And I had to go back because I left some things out. And the next year in 2018, I added peace because peace is so important to me. If there is no peace, what are we doing? If there is no peace, like, I don't want to be there. Okay. And I love that you can see, like, if you're watching a video, my values were originally written in black, but then when I went back to add peace, it's in blue. And I think that it's important to note that it's okay if you change your mind. It's okay if you get some new information and decide to make adjustments. That's called growth. That's supposed to happen. And so I love that everything that I said I value is great. But there was room to go deeper and to add. And I think that's how it's supposed to go in life. Like, it's great to have a foundation, but you got to build on that. And sometimes, you know, something might start off a little sloppy. You got to scrap it and restart again. And life is like that. So when you think about your values, yeah, like what's important to you it's good to identify those things, but then as you continue to live your life and you have different experiences, different encounters, and you maybe see something new or have something new happens and you make a decision or something changes, that's perfectly okay. Like, there is no shame or no guilt for that. You need to evolve, grow, level up as necessary. So I like to talk about values because in 2017, before I even graduated college, I decided two things: my values and what was important to me in a partner, in a man. And so in a perfect world, I was supposed to write down these things because I had clarity on them. And then from that place of clarity, let it dictate my actions. But that's not what happened. And so I always tell this story because it's so important. As I mentioned, I decided to write down what I wanted, what's important to me, and what I want in a man. And those two things are important because, as I mentioned, when you decide what's important to you, that then dictates how you go about your everyday, how you go about your life. And when you decide what's important to you in a partner and a man, for me personally, that then dictates what kind of person that I'm willing to entertain, ideally, right? So I wrote these things down, what's important to me. And I know there's like mixed opinions about the list. Some people say throw your list out. Some people say make the list. Me personally, I say make the list, but be real with it. Like, when you're making your list, let's talk about character. Let's talk about values. Like, let's not talk about like superficial things that will change over time or that are not really that serious. Like, you could do without them. Like, if your list is like 6 figures, tall, dark skin, handsome, bearded, doctor, like, you might need to rethink your list. But if your list is things like a man of God, someone who has the fear of God, someone who's kind, someone who loves family, somebody who's gonna, take my family in as their own, somebody who values education and like trying new things. If that's the type of things on your list, then yeah, like, that's important that you're able to recognize and verbalize those things. And that's kind of how my list looks. So anyways, I made this list, but life goes on. And so I'm living life. I am transitioning from college into adulthood. Things are getting real. And I meet this guy who would later become my first husband, and now ex-husband. And I was so desperate for a relationship. Like, when I met this man, I was like, this has to work because I'm tired of starting over. We gonna make this work because I don't have no more first date, what's your favorite color in me, right? I know what it feels like to be fed up with dating and getting to know people, and that's where I was. And so when I met this man and we went on our first date or we had conversations, there was maybe some flags there, but I chose to ignore them because I said we gonna make it work. Okay, like, I'm feeling the feels. He feels very familiar to me, side eye, and so this must be it. We're gonna make it work no matter what. And I was so hard-headed. And so I got myself into this relationship that was absolutely terrible for me. It was abusive. I lost myself. I was depressed. I was angry. It was so unhealthy. And I think the first flags or signs of abuse were like emotionally, mentally, but because I didn't realize that abuse could manifest itself that way. I felt like, oh, because I'm not being hit and he has 3 jobs and we have fun, like, it's fine, this is good enough. And I just settled in this relationship. Fast forward to when I finally left and came to terms with the fact that, no, like, this is an abusive relationship. In part of my process of moving forward, before I could properly move forward, I had to look back. Because if you look back, you will see patterns. And when I looked back, because I had to ask myself, like, how did I get here? I never wanted to be divorced. I never wanted to be in an abusive relationship. But yet here I am. And how did I get here? Because we need damage control, okay? We need to go back and figure this out. And so when I went back to my good old journal from 2017 and I saw the list of things I said I wanted, in a man. I said I wanted. Nobody told me. I said this is what I want. When I looked at that list and I compared it to the man that I had in my life, y'all, let's say that this list was like 20 things. This man had like 5, if that. That's being generous. And remember what I said about how your values are supposed to be a guide? Had I stopped early in the relationship, before I got all of my feelings, before I was hard-headed and committed, and before I was in love, before I was stigmatized, whatever you want to call it, had I stopped early to look and say, wow, I kind of like this guy, this might go somewhere, but let me pause, take a step back, and let me see what he is showing me, what he has presented to me, and let me compare it to what I have decided that I need in a partner. Had I done that honestly with myself early, I probably would have noticed that there are some discrepancies. And this is why it's so important to identify your values, because as you're faced with different situations, different choices that you have to make, it gives you a measurement to pause, take a step back, and say, this is what's being presented to me, but this is what I have decided that I will accept. And you will never go wrong sticking with your values, because if you sacrifice your values for a person, for an experience, for an opportunity, you're going to pay for that in the long run. They're not. You are. But if you stick to your values and what you have decided is important to you, it's a form of honoring yourself. It's a form of self-love. And at the end of the day, you might be lonelier because you stuck to your values. You might not see all of the money as fast as you could have if you had decided to go with whatever, but you stuck with your values. But in the long run, sticking with your values is like building a firm foundation. Like, when you just make decisions based on how you feel, it's very temporary. It's very unstable. Yeah, that's the word. It's unstable when you just make decisions based on your feelings. Scary place to be. But when you take a moment to pause and decide, I want things in my life that are quality. I want things in my life that will last the test of life, the trials of time. I want a firm foundation. You have to honor your values, because you will be like suffering, you will be miserable, you'll be in situations that you're like, how did I get here? It wasn't supposed to be like this. It's like that because you didn't honor your values and what was really important to you as a person. And I speak from experience, because I found myself in relationships I had no business being in. I found myself at jobs that I was absolutely miserable in and that were affecting my mental health so badly, because they were not in alignment with my values. And so, if you've never done it before, I challenge you to take a moment and just decide what's your values. And remember when I read my list, my initial mentality was, y'all know, like the cute little signs in the store that's like love, peace, hope, faith. I thought those were like, that was values. And so I wrote like peace, ambition, honesty, like these cute words. But I've learned that values are a lot deeper than that. And I think like the one hitter, the one words is a great starting place. Love is important to me. God is important to me. Family is important to me. But if you really want to take it to another level and dig deeper, break those down. Like, God is important to me. And because of that, that means XYZ. That means I will live like this. I will do this. My family will do this. My house will be like this. My practices around rest will look like this. My prayer, my spiritual disciplines will look like this. Growth is important to me. Because of that, I will do X, Y, and Z. I will listen to X, Y, Z. I will put myself around certain kind of people. What else can I talk about? Even just take it deeper to the things of like, when it comes to my friends, this is important to me. So I won't be with people who do X, Y, Z. I won't surround myself with people who talk about X, Y, Z. Like, you can really take it deeper than just like, oh, knowledge is important to me. Entrepreneurship is important to me. Creativity is important to me. Like, look at it as, this is important to me. So I will XYZ. I will surround myself with this kind of people. I will watch these kinds of things. I will read these kinds of things. I will go to these kinds of places. I will not go to these kinds of places. I will not be with somebody who does blah, blah, blah. And so you can really just take it as deep as you want, because it's all about getting clarity and knowing how you're going to operate in your day-to-day life, because that's where your values should show up in how you operate and conduct yourself. All right, I think that's enough on values. So the next thing I want to talk about is beliefs. And I love talking about beliefs and mindset because it's so important. As I stated earlier, the definition of a belief is an acceptance that a statement is true or that something exists. And let me say this. This is really important. Your beliefs can be false. Your beliefs can be full of mistakes, full of lies. They like to be, your beliefs could be erroneous. I love that word. I have not used that word in a minute, so I have to throw that in there. Vocab. Your beliefs could be false or erroneous. And so just because you believe something doesn't mean that it's necessarily true. And that can be a scary thing, but we'll talk about that more in a second. So one thing that I have heard, a few things I have heard on this topic of beliefs in your mindset: if you say that you can't, you can't. If you say that you can, you can. Your beliefs are going to dictate your actions because your thoughts precede your actions. Your actions will expose what you really believe to be true. And something that I grew up hearing is that the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your thoughts. Did I say that right? Yeah. The quality, I said it reverse, but the quality of your thinking determines the quality of your life. And so it's so important to make sure that things are right up here, because as I believe Lauryn Hill says, how you gonna win if you ain't right within? Not only within, but within. And if you're listening to this just audio, when I say within, I'm talking about your heart and I'm talking about your mind. If they're not right, you're not gonna be able to win. And so your beliefs dictate your actions. Your beliefs can change over time. And again, I want to make that so clear that like whatever you believe, whatever you value, it's okay if those things change over time. That's perfectly fine. And for the believer especially, one of the most popular scriptures is, I didn't write down the exact location, but I think it's in Romans 12, 1 through 2. Well, I think it's just 1. But it's definitely Romans chapter 12. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. What do you believe that you're capable of? What do you believe about yourself? What do you believe about love? What do you believe about money? What do you believe about family? What do you believe about God? Because your beliefs are going to dictate what manifests in your life, good or bad. Your beliefs are going to dictate how you maneuver and operate in life, good or bad. And I want to dig a little bit deeper because, going back to the definition, it said that the acceptance that a statement is true or that something exists. And I think in this day and age, we're like hit with so many headlines, titles, false news, not trigger warning. Like, what's the word? Oh, clickbait. Like clickbait, things to just capture our attention. And like as we process these things, we have to ask ourselves, like, is this true? Like, we have to filter through all these things that are competing for our attention and our time. And so I remember back in school, we used to have tests and it would be true or false. And I think it's the same way in life. When somebody tells you something, when you hear something, when you read something, you have to decide, is that true or is that false? And act accordingly. And I was tempted to just say that a belief is an acceptance that a statement is true. But that second part about a belief that is an acceptance that something exists is important. Because how many times do we talk ourselves out of something because we don't think that it's really possible or that it really exists? And so like when I was asking those questions, like, what do you believe you're capable of? Me personally, I do believe that I will be a multimillionaire one day. It's not even a question. It's only a matter of time. But some people, believe that having a 6-figure job is the ultimate, and it's just all a matter of belief. Because whatever you believe, your beliefs are gonna create like a limit or a ceiling or a lid. And so if your beliefs are down here, don't be surprised when the life that you live only comes up so far. But if you are believing big, if you are believing crazy things, if you are believing for the impossible, for life with no limits, and you're up here with your belief, don't be surprised when your life comes up here, or maybe even up here, because your level of belief is up here and not down here at the floor. It does really start with you, and what do you believe is possible for you. Like, some people, their biggest hope in life is to have a good job. But for me, I believe it's possible to have multiple streams of income and to be able to get, I've heard people say that they get money every single day. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but I'd like to find out, okay? Because your beliefs are so important. They're going to dictate, they kind of dictate like where your life will go. It might not be on your time, but just in the long run. What do you believe about yourself? That's so important, because the way that you think about yourself, the way that you talk to yourself is going to show up. Like, thoughts are real things. Just because you can't see them doesn't mean that they don't exist. And I feel like Dr. Caroline Leaf was talking about how, depending on the thoughts that you think, how different areas of your brain will like light up if they're watching it. So like, thoughts are very much real. Like, they have effects and consequences. And so one thing that I shared that I am like wrestling with this week is my self-confidence and showing up believing that I am enough. Because how you show up in life when you don't think that you're good enough, when you feel less than, when you don't think that you have anything to offer, it's you'll be shrinking. You'll be going through life trying not to bother anybody, trying not to hurt anybody, missing out on all the goodness that God has for you, because you don't think you're good enough. But on the flip side, if you walk around operating in this space where you believe that I am good enough, there is more than enough out there. I have so much to give. I have so much to offer. I'm valuable. I'm necessary. If you live from that place, life is beautiful. Life becomes something a whole new ball game. And so what you believe about yourself matters, because if your self-esteem and your self-worth is low, you're going to miss out on so much goodness that is available to you. Whereas if your self-confidence, your self-worth, your self-belief, all these things is healthy, is thriving, is up here, is high, like, that's also going to benefit your life so richly. And so it matters how you think about yourself, how you talk to yourself, okay? Like, don't be talking to my friend any type of way, because y'all my friends. Don't be talking about my friend mean, okay? I don't like that. Be nice to yourself. And so I already touched on like what you believe about money, but also like, what do you believe about love? If you believe that all men cheat, that's going to show up in your relationships. If you believe that you're not worthy to be a wife, that's going to show up in your relationships. If you believe that you're going to have to raise a man, like, he's going to become like your other child, you're going to have to take over for his mom, it's going to show up in your relationships. If you believe that the least that you deserve is somebody who comes home at night and has sex with you here and there, that's going to show up in your relationships. If you believe that nobody in your family gets married and they just be sleeping around with everybody, having kids with everybody, and that's normal, that's going to show up in your relationships. But if you believe that you are somebody's future spouse, if you believe that healthy marriages exist, if you believe that family matters and you're going to have a great one, if you believe that the bare minimum is dead, and that you deserve the best, you deserve the romance, you deserve the loyalty, you deserve princess treatment. If you believe that, it's also going to show up in your love life. And so what do you believe about love? And when it comes to beliefs, you really got to ask yourself, where did this come from? What do I believe, and who told me that? Because Yeah, you could look at it as like, oh, my second grade teacher told me I was never going to be nothing, so I'm not. Or you could look at it like, um, well, this is what my parents always did growing up. Or you could look at it like this, that's what my ex told me. You could look at it on that level, like who told you that. But on a higher level, look at it like this. There's a spiritual realm and there's two sides, good and bad, positive, negative, good, evil, however you want to look at it, God, the devil. And so when you look at it like that and you say, who told you that? Let me just say this. If it's not coming from God, it's coming from the enemy. And if it's coming from the enemy, it's probably a lie. So who told you that? When you look at your beliefs and what do you believe, you have to ask yourself, where did I pick this up from? Who told you that? And so beliefs are so important. And maybe you're listening to me and you're like, yeah, you know what? I do have some stinking thinking. I do have some beliefs that gotta go. I do have some beliefs that are just simply not true about myself, about the love that I deserve, about the life that I can live. Maybe you're thinking it's time for a change because I've never seen what I know is possible. Like the people around me live one type of way, but I know I'm called to higher, I'm called to better, but I just don't know how to get there. Well, and like the word says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So how do we practically do that? How do we expand our thinking, our beliefs? So some quick things that I thought about was reading. Reading books is so good for you. I know we like to, as adults, we like to read all these serious books about how to change your life, personal development, self-help, da da da, and that's great. But just reading anything, reading a fiction book or like a made up story is just as good for your brain as reading something that's like self help or like somebody's story. But that's not really the point that I'm here to make. Read books. There is some books out there that will change your life. And if you need some suggestions of books to read, go check out my podcast, Get Up 10. Look for the interviews that I have done with people. And most of those interviews in the show notes, I've asked my guests to suggest a book that has changed their life, that has changed the way they think. And so you don't even have to listen to the episodes. You can just go in the scroll notes, and I always put the books that they recommend. And they have recommended some really amazing books. So for me personally, there's been several books that have really like changed my life. Rich Dad Poor Dad. I forgot the author's name, but Rich Dad Poor Dad. That book will shift something in you. Believe. Is it Believing Bigger? Yeah, Believing Bigger by Marshawn Evans Daniels. Coach Rocky, I think, a couple weeks ago talked. I don't know if it's Coach Rocky, but anyway, somebody talked about the book We Should All Be Millionaires by, I think her name is Rachel Rodgers. And I will say, like, be careful with some of these self-help books because they could be interesting, but some of them are really powerful and will shift the way that you think. And to do something, to become something you've never been, you have to do something that you've never done. And so these books can be like a guide for you. So read books, okay? Put down the phone, get off. I know we on Instagram or Facebook right now. Get off with the social media and pick up a book. It's going to change your life. Have high level conversations. I don't like to be around people who's gossiping and complaining. I like to be around people who are talking about big ideas, what they're doing, what projects they got going on, how they're trying to level up, how they're trying to move forward, how they're trying to break generational curses, what gems their therapist just dropped on them, what they was thinking about as they went for their walk and was talking to God. It's through those conversations that we can really see change and growth because words are powerful and the tongue can speak life or death. Like, so the conversations that we're having with other people they are important and they are matter. Don't be around people who's only here to gossip, lie, put other people down, complain, and just joke all the time. Like, I love humor. I love to laugh. But at the end of the day, like, we gotta get serious sometimes. I love that one picture that's like, get serious. Get serious about your life. Get serious about what you want. Get serious about all these things. I don't know. I'm gonna post it again one of these days. But like, sometimes you gotta get serious. Have a good conversation. I love me a good deep conversation. So if you don't have nobody to talk to about deep stuff, depending on the time I got, I may or may not be here for you. But also travel. When you travel, you get to see things differently, because especially as Americans, we have this mentality. We live in a bubble and we think that how we have seen it done or how we do it is the way to do it. But when you travel, you get to see that like there's so many different ways of doing things, ways of being, ways of thinking, and it's not a matter of right and wrong always, but sometimes it's a matter of like this is what works for this environment. And when you know how to operate in different environments, that's really powerful. But also, you might pick up things from other people that you could then implement in your own life. Like, you was doing something one type of way, and then you traveled, you went somewhere, and you saw them doing. Let's talk about food because I love to talk about food, right? Let's say that you are doing your best to eat healthy, you're eating things that you see in the supermarket, but then you go to another country where they have really good health and you observe their diet and how they're eating, and then you can now come back home and implement what you saw over there into your own life. You've just expanded your beliefs, your way of thinking. That's it's literally that easy. So I'm really big on traveling because not only because it's nice to take a vacation and do nice things, but also just because of what it does for you. This about this time last year, I went to a retreat for female entrepreneurs at a luxury resort. It was my first time ever staying in a luxury resort where I had my own butler. The housekeeping was coming like in the morning to make the bed, in the evening to like, I don't even know the word, but essentially like prepare the bed to be slept in. Like it was, I had a butler that I would just text him if I want anything. Kept texting that man for more candy because it was so good. And as I walked around the resort, I observed the other types of people that were there and how did they carry themselves and who were they with. And the way that I didn't have that luxury experience until my mid 20s, I hope that I can give that luxury experience to my daughter at a younger age, because when you're around luxury, it just does something to you. It reminds you of like, I'm worthy of this. I deserve the best. And that came from traveling. I could have came to those conclusions other ways, but traveling did it for me. So I'm always an advocate for a good trip. Attend events. If you've been following me for any amount of time, you know that I'm going to go to a conference, I'm going to go to a brunch, I'm going to go to a retreat, I'm going to get in the room with people who are going where I want to go, doing what I want to do. Through those things, my life has literally been changed. I've been challenged. I love Tiffany Montgomery and her Millions conference, and I remember like one day I was listening to her, and she said, I have it written down somewhere, so I might be misquoting this, but she said something like, I just made 600K this week. When she said that, I don't know if it was like this week or in a couple days, something crazy like that. When she said that, it let me know that like it's being done and it's possible for me too. And so it works the same way with all the stuff that I've done. What do you want to do professionally? What do you want your career to be? Get in the room with people who are doing it. What do you want for your love life? What do you want for your future marriage? Get in the room with people who have successful marriages. Now that, I gotta say, like, in the fine print, like, some of these people be capping. Some of these people be putting on a front. But in general, there are really some people out here who have got this marriage thing down packed and are willing to teach and that have valuable lessons that you can learn from. Get in the room with those people. You want to make $1 million? Get in the room with some millionaires. You want to start your own business? Get in the room with some entrepreneurs. Like, whatever you want to do, maybe you haven't seen it with your own eyes yet, but let me tell you, if it's in your mind, I'm sure it's possible. And if you might be the first one called to do something, that's all right. You might be the first one called to do something, and that's perfectly fine. I love a good trailblazer. But a lot of the times, the things that we want to do have been already done in some way, shape, or form. And so get around those people so that you can learn from them. Because a lot of people at the top are very much willing to teach. And you just have to be like confident enough to put yourself out there and to ask questions. The quality of, like I said before, the quality of your thinking determines the quality of your life. But it can also be said that the quality of the questions that you ask will determine the quality of your life. So even if you have to make an investment to get in these places, it's worth it, because you're not just investing into somebody's wallet, you're investing into yourself at the end of the day, and you are your best asset. So whenever you invest in yourself, there's always going to be a return. So I have to say this because, I'm a Jesus girl. For the Christian, if you want to change your thinking or audit your thinking or think a new thought, a different thought than what you've been thinking, read your Bible. It's going to expose you. Okay? And I think it's really important to also have accountability for your thoughts, because like I said, you could be thinking something and it could be completely false, completely a lie. And it's important to have people in your life that are able to say, hey, that's not true. Hey, I'm going to need you to talk a little bit nicer about yourself. Hey, who told you that? And so it's important to have accountability when it comes to your thoughts. Don't just leave them all up in your head. Like, get them out, whether you need to write it out, whether you need to talk it out. Find a way to get what's in out, because if you just leave it all in, it could get heavy. And like I said, you could be holding on to something that is a complete lie. And so have honest conversations with, if you have great family and friends. I do that all the time to my friend. I'm like, hey, let me get your opinion on something. And I'll tell them like whatever I've been thinking about. I also am a big advocate for therapy, and I do share with my therapist, like, yeah, so this is what happened and this is what I was thinking. And she will call me out and be like, that's not biblical, right? That's not true, right? And I need that sometimes. And also, you can always go directly to the source, like talk to God, pray, because the more time that you spend with God and in his word, you're supposed to change. You're not supposed to be the same person. And like I said, the Bible is the only book that when you read it, it reads you. And so if you're really in your word for real, as you read it, it's going to expose you. You're going to like see things that's like, oh, word, that's what God thinks about me. That's what God says about me. That's God's promises over my life. Wait a minute, I have access to X, Y, and Z? Jesus did what for me? And it's going to change everything when you really dig into what God's word says as a Christian. So, your beliefs are so important, because when you operate out of lies and false beliefs, it's going to manifest in your life. But when you think the highest thought, which is what we should be doing, our default setting is negativity, but when you really take accountability and take control and think the highest thought, think positive, think of the possibilities, think of the opportunities, that's also going to manifest in your life in the best way. So get around some people that's going to check you, direct you, and just really like help you to grow. And don't be afraid for your beliefs to be challenged. And that's going to lead me into my next topic. I didn't even plan that. That's going to lead me into my next topic. So the last thing I wanted to talk about was convictions. And convictions are firmly held beliefs, right? So you could believe something, it could be true or false. But when you really believe something, like when you're fully convinced, fully persuaded, that's when your belief is now a conviction. It's so much deeper than just a belief. Because you can say, yeah, I believe that. That's true. But it's different when you say, no, I believe this. I know this to be true. You can't tell me different. And I wanted to share this quote from Martin Luther King Jr. And it says, life isn't worth living until you have found something to die for. Life isn't worth living until you have found something to die for. And I know that when we talk about death and dying, like, it can be a little uncomfortable. But let's be real, like, we're all going to die one day. And, like, what are you leaving behind? What will your legacy be? What are you willing to die for? Like, a lot of people, most people, they say they'd be willing to die for their kids. They'd be willing to die for their spouse. But I think on top of that, when you found something that, a deep sense of purpose, that you're like, I would be willing to die if it means that X, Y, and Z, if it means that more Black kids go to college, if it means that more women operate boldly in their calling, if it means that more African Americans have access to capital, if it means that, like, when you really have a deeper sense of purpose and you know that you would be willing to die because XYZ is happening, that's more of like a conviction. That means that thing is deep in you. And another verse that I think of is Philippians 1:21. It's just, for me to live is Christ and to die is gain. And I think that the Christian life is so interesting because you have to like die to yourself daily. And what that means is like it's discipline. And there's like some things that's like the old you, the like lower level you that's got to go, so that the you that God who has created you to be, the you that's really going to be a funnel for his glory and his power, the you that's really going to have impact and change lives, can really walk forward. But it also means that like the you that just wants to stay in bed, the you that just wants to eat McDonald's every day, the you that just wants to binge watch Netflix all day, they gotta go, because you need to step into greater and bigger. And just, like, we cannot be driven by emotions and feelings. Like, there has to be something deeper. And so convictions, what are you willing to die for? And one thing that I heard recently, that I probably heard before in life, is that a conviction is not a conviction until it's tested. And so you could say that you really, really believe X, Y, and Z, but until push comes to shove, we don't really know that. And when push does come to shove, we gonna see what you really believe, because it's gonna come out. Whether it, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, whether it comes out verbally, whether your actions show us what you really believe, it's gonna come out somehow. And so I always think of the two houses, the one that was built on sand and the one that was built on a rock. Whatever you choose to build with, whatever you choose to build on, it's up to you. That's your decision. You're free to make that decision. But let me tell you something. Truth stands the test of time. Truth will not be easily removed. There's certain, like, quality will stand the test of time. That cheap stuff, that fast stuff, is going to get blown away, washed away. It's not going to last. And so the house, and I heard Tony Evans speak on this last year, I think, how like the house that's built on sand is not expensive to build on. I could go build a sandcastle at the beach right now. But let me tell you something, when that wave comes in, whatever I built, it's gone. Like it never existed. But when you build on the rock, and Tony Evans said, like, when you build on a rock, when you build on cement, that's not cheap. That's going to cost you something. You're going to have to invest something. There's a price to be paid. But when you build on the rock, let that wave come. Let that rainstorm come. Let that thunder come. Your house is still going to be there. And so when you think about your beliefs, you want to make sure that your beliefs, your values are rooted on solid things, rooted on truth, not no wishy-washy, cute, oh, I just felt like this. You want like quality that's going to stand the test of time. And so yeah, a conviction, you will not know that something is a conviction until it's tested. But let me just say this, the tests are going to come. Don't worry about that. But the best way to pass a test is to decide ahead of time how you will respond, how you will react. I've heard it said that in an emergency situation, you will respond to the level of your highest training. And so make sure that you are prepared. But also when you're prepared, I don't know where I'm going with this, but I'll just flow. When you're prepared, your preparation will dictate the opportunities that come your way. Your preparation will dictate your elevation. And so decide ahead of time. And that's why I'm having this conversation with y'all. And if you are hopping in to the live, we're at the end now. So go back to the beginning, because I really want to challenge you to take a moment and sit with yourself. Ask yourself, what do I value? What's important to me? And because that's important to me, how will I maneuver through my life? What do I believe? Where did that come from? Is that a good belief or is that a bad belief? Do I need to change some of my beliefs? What am I convicted about? What am I willing to die for? What am I willing to shout from the mountaintops? What am I willing to say in the face of persecution? If everybody is going to the left, am I willing to go to the right? Conviction. And so if you have not already sat with yourself and taken a moment to reflect on these things for you personally, I really encourage you to do that. Or maybe you have sat, maybe you've made the vision boards, maybe you've been journaling, maybe you have had these conversations with yourself, but when was the last time? Because I'm sure that you've grown. I hope that you've grown. And so maybe it's time to go back and make some adjustments. I talked about how to go deeper with the values. Maybe you need to spend some time going deeper, because when you have clarity in your life, you move differently. You move differently. When you're unsure about things, you're going to be more hesitant. But when you have clarity, one of my favorite sayings is like, decide the life that you want and say no to everything that isn't it. And that's what clarity around your values and beliefs allows you to do. Like a person, an opportunity, something presents itself to you, and now you have the tools to say, is this in alignment with my values? If not, no thank you. If it is, yes, let's try it out. And sometimes you might not know, and you might just have to try something new. But the beauty of trying something new is that you'll either find something that you love, that's good, that worked out great, or it'll be a lesson, and you'll know what to never do again. So yeah, that's all I got. Values, beliefs, convictions. What are they and why do they matter? Thank you so much for listening. And if you are watching this video, don't worry. This will be available on my podcast, so you can listen to it tomorrow, every day if you want. Or maybe you could just listen to all the episodes of Get Up 10. I don't know. Maybe you missed one that was really for you, or that is for you right now in this season. I don't know. But we got over 70 episodes for you to go back and go through. So I'm just saying, you might want to go check out an episode of Get Up 10 podcast. But that's all I got. Thank you so much for listening, and to everybody who tuned in. Bye.